Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry, high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher X video. All right, it's been a while since we covered some Durnil stuff, and this one caught my eye. It's called, What If Islam Never Existed? So we'll see if he's going to throw some maps or memes or, all the stuff that Drew does. And I'll be sure to add whatever I can. All right, let's get started. All right, this video is linked down below. Man, Drew just got past 1.5 million subs. This guy's an OG, man. He's been doing this for years. All right, let's see what we got. What if Islam never existed? We're going to have different religions, different areas. Let's see what he's got.
What if Islam never existed? Oh boy. So there will obviously be a lot of places that remain unchanged. For example, Protestantism is still big here in Germany, the Nordics, the UK. The Irish are still divided. And then Orthodox still dominates Greece as well as parts of modern day Russia. But this is where the big changes begin. Right. We actually have a Roman Catholic North Africa still, which going back to the Roman Empire maps, I think that's fair to say. I think everything in the Mediterranean would more than likely be some sort of Christian. Christianity.
One thing I need to look at is, okay, towards the end of the Roman Empire, they haven't just made Christianity legal, but it becomes the official religion. And in those northern areas there, how deeply was it practiced there in those northern African parts? Now, it definitely is at northwestern. Okay, as you get to like the northeast, you are going to get like the Coptic Christians and some of the oldest Christian communities came up through the Nile having there too. So yeah, I wonder how deeply that would be.
I think everything in the Mediterranean would more than likely be some sort of Christian. Christianity in the 5th century was stretching pretty far into Africa. That's part of the reason why Ethiopia is actually the second oldest Christian nation. Right. Nobody believes me when I say that fact. Armenia, though, is number one. So you have a couple of different...
Yeah, Ethiopia, that story is super interesting because they got cut off very quickly when the Roman Empire fell, and their rule from Ethiopia up the Nile is going to really get cut off. They become kind of this island of Christianity. Again, they became Christian very quickly in the early centuries of Christianity, and they developed kind of like their own little identity of their own form of Ethiopian Christianity. Now, when you check in centuries later, you're going to see there's a lot of core things similar, but there's a lot of practices that the Ethiopians were doing that weren't part of or weren't what you were doing up north, towards the Mediterranean. The Kingdom of Axum, look into them. It's super fascinating. By the way, there is a group there that believes that the Ark of the Covenant was down there in Ethiopia. And if you actually want to look it up, there's a church and a guy who basically spends his life protecting this church that's maybe has the Ark of the Covenant. Look into it. You'll find it fascinating.
Denominations in modern day Egypt, we have Coptic Christianity and then Ethiopian Orthodoxy down here. There's also Berber religions deeper into the Sahara Desert. So this doesn't stretch too far in. I'm now just wondering, what is the date on this map?
This is where I thought maybe more of the Berber beliefs would sort of kind of, I don't know if it's regain or something or get more territory. You see the yellow areas in northwestern Africa. This is where I was wondering a little bit. All right, we'll see if he does get to Zoroastrianism. Hinduism creeping over there. Oh, well, up to, they're getting into like Afghanistan there a little bit, but mostly Pakistan. Okay, anyway.
Seeing that Ireland is divided did make me think it's a modern day map, but there's just kind of Berber religions going on in the Sahara here in 2025.
Well, those people still refer to themselves as Berbers, or at least Berber ancestry.
Roman Catholicism would probably have spread everywhere. But then again, we have Arab polytheism in this peninsula. That's a weird thing to say out loud. Not used to that. Syriac Christianity. Did I say that word right? Of course, Armenia would still be the same. Zoroastrian.
Yeah, Armenia and other places, another place that had a little island there. This is, I think it would be the biggest impact right here would be the continued existence of Zoroastrianism, which basically got rooted out with the spread of Islam into modern day Iran into Persia. That's, I think, the biggest one that would change.
They're still celebrating that here in Persia, and then Hinduism as well, still here with these borders. Forgetting about Europe for a second, what happens to South Asia? Did they no longer split between Pakistan and India? Does all the British Raj just remain just a giant country all under Hinduism? There's also Tengrism.
No, it's way too diverse. India is too diverse. There's only a handful of groups that have really gonna rule over all of that. So, and again, was this modern though? It can't. Okay, Tengrism, that's like the religion of the Mongols, so
inside of, I'm definitely mispronouncing that, inside of Central Asia. I gotta be honest, I feel like this universe doesn't explore enough of what this world would be like without Islam. I feel like the schism between Christianity would be even bigger, even larger. Maybe there'd be a lot more infighting. As humans, we just love looking at the town down the street from us and being like, those are the bad guys. We'll make an enemy out of anyone.
You know what? I think I do agree with Drew here.
The town down the street. Bigger, even
in that
larger,
that there would be probably more diversity in the Christian world. I kind of agree with that. So like, okay, you had the Orthodox Christian church, but then if Christianity is going to remain longer in around like Mesopotamia, then yeah, it's probably going to divide itself just a little bit more. I mean, we saw what happened with the Armenian church, and then what went down clear down to Christianity down to Ethiopia. Although I guess Christianity would have stayed maybe a little bit more together up and down the Nile. Maybe there wouldn't have been such a divided Ethiopian Christian church. Actually, that's probably the case.
Maybe there'd be a lot more infighting. As humans, we just love looking at the town down the street from us and being like, those are the bad guys. We'll make an enemy out of anyone. I wonder if Arabic polytheism would be strong enough to resist Christianity. Christianity, also like Islam, also had the tendency to taking over weaker, less. That's what I was wondering. With all these faiths down here, including Berber, I mean, does this really last until 2025 in this?
It would be interesting for the fact that cross the Berber, so that, you know, there's Arab conquest, Arab migrations all across northern Africa, and then they traded south to across the Sahara, which brought Islam to like southwestern Africa, like Mali. I guess that wouldn't have been a unified state in that way, and had those uniform efforts that happened under their kind of banner of Islam as well. So now, because you had this Arab polytheism, but that wasn't ruled by like a centralized entity. So it would be more vulnerable, I guess, to empires that might grow into those regions. Although the interest into going into the Arabian Peninsula would not have been as big of a deal, especially because it's not as resource rich when it comes to some of the things for sustainability of life. But remember, the Arab world came out of those regions to the other regions that were more resource rich. So I don't know if Arab polytheism would probably remain down there, but the northern parts, as you get closer to like Mesopotamia, probably more and more conquered by Christian lands.
These faiths down here, including Berber, I mean, does this really last until 2025 in this universe? Because I don't really know. They're literally all surrounded. Missed opportunity for bigger Zoroastrianism, in my opinion. It's an actual age religion like Christianity and Islam, and could have had the opportunity to spread further if it weren't for the way of the caliphate. Yeah, I think something would have popped up, or there would be some sort of effect that takes place, someone that would maybe fill that power vacuum. Judaism would be much...
Yeah, I mean, it could be... I mean, there had just been a toppling and a king of the hill of Persian empires that have come through there. So you'd basically get another Persian wars, like literally like the ancient Greek version. I guess that there would have been like a medieval version of that. I guess that could have gone different ways, but Byzantine Empire was holding on pretty solid there. But yeah, it'd be interesting.
Stronger. Also, there'd be many Jews in Yemen before the rise of Islam. This is such an interesting old history. I've seen it covered many times before. You can go in so many different ways. It honestly interesting. Judaism would be stronger.
I think the more weakening thing, though, of centralization of Judaism, though, really ended with the Roman Empire, them pretty much driving out their Jewish population after the Jewish revolt in the first century. And that's going to be 500 years before Islam. Judaism also, though, doesn't proselyte, so it doesn't spread that way. So I don't know really what impact maybe that would have had. But then also you had the movement of Jewish people with out of like places like Spain, where they were living under the Moors for centuries and thrived there. But then with the Reconquista, that's going to finish up around 1492, and you're going to get the Inquisition coming back again. If you remember, a lot of the Jews left Spain because of that Christian persecution and went and moved into the Ottoman Empire, a Muslim empire, right? That they are going to end up finding a home in and make a small community around the Palestine area, although it was very much a minority.
Would be much stronger. Also, there'd be many Jews in Yemen before the rise of Islam. This is such an interesting old history.
Although that is true because, of course, some Jews are going to be converting to Islam, like in that region, the indigenous peoples there.
Many times before. You can go in so many different ways. It honestly feels like there's endless possibilities.
So there would be stronger, but...
So what if the small nation of Haiti became the new Singapore of America, with not only a rapid transit system, but the highest life expectancy, a very powerful passport, and unemployment that's only at 1.8%? Wonder what Haiti's current unemployment rate is at.
No, it could never be like a Singapore, because it comes back to geography.
Only a rapid transit system, but the highest life expectancy, a very powerful...
The problem, because Haiti is not as much and nearly as much of a maritime choke point. If you know where Haiti is, my cursor is kind of small here. Where Singapore, it literally is linking the Indian Ocean and to East Asia down here towards the tip there. So it could never be that, but I know it's not that serious.
Powerful passport and unemployment that's only at 1.8%. Wonder what Haiti's current unemployment rate is at. My goodness. Okay, it is currently at like 15% right now. But in this universe, they've got all sorts of new tourist attractions. Another way to describe this place would be the French-speaking Singapore. Of course, they held the Haitian Grand Prix. Do they actually have 4 mottos? Okay, no, I was gonna say they have 2, one in French.
One interesting thing is, after the Haitian Revolution, Haiti was Saint Domingue, as it was called, was probably the most profitable colony that France had because of their insane profits that came out of, their use of slavery to make sugar. And after the Haitian Revolution, the Haitians did not stay basically with as much of the sugar production. I can imagine there's a lot of like PTSD around that, of the brutal conditions that were there, and economically did hurt them a little bit to not go all into keeping with the sugar production. But at the same time, it's understandable why they didn't. But remember too, the one thing that really hurt Haiti economically was to end that war with France. They had to pay reparations, which basically bankrupted their country from the get-go, but not pursuing to try to get to the levels of sugar production. Now, what that would have meant is like former slaves are still, now even though they're free and they're paid workers, would go and then make sugar. They could still do that, but there were, I guess, from what I understand, a lot that didn't want to continue doing that. So their biggest in that could have got them economically grown again, it not going into that once they became independent was damaging for their long-term prospects. But all of it is pretty understandable.
Another one in Haitian Creole. But in this universe, I guess to be even more economically viable, they have an English and Spanish motto, and also English and Spanish versions of their anthem. Their demographic breakdown looks something like this. Overall, a very Christian nation as well. Yeah, remember Haiti was actually the second nation on Earth to become independent just after the USA. I feel like in this universe where Haiti is the second nation on Earth to become independent just after the USA.
Well, no, he worded that wrong. Second nation to become independent on Earth. Well, no, but second republic in the West that got created after the American Revolution. Mm-hmm.
I feel like in this universe where Haiti's just absolutely dominating, they'd probably just straight up buy the Dominican Republic. Why not unite the island of Hispaniola? So I think to properly analyze this situation, we need to look at what makes Singapore so wealthy. And a lot of that comes down to shipping lanes. It's like a giant worldwide freeway that passes. By
the way, this goes for centuries. This is the Strait of Malacca. This was the gateway to Asia, the Spice Islands, which are above here in Indonesia, and then your trade all the way up to China and Japan. There's a choke point, a geographic choke point. Otherwise, you got to go around Sumatra. You're going to go thousands of miles out of your way. So, and if you study world history to that depth, especially around the Middle Ages, I guess you would call, there has also been a king of the hill competition for who controls that. You had the Kingdom of Malacca. You had different types of religious groups that came in. Muslim traders came in and set up kingdoms there. And then, of course, then the Europeans come in, the Portuguese take it. And then the Dutch are going to take it and keep going that way.
Passes by their coastline every day, whether it's trade from Europe, Africa, or India going to China, Japan, or Korea, or vice versa. I mean, that's just a lot of money flowing on through. I know it's easy to say this in retrospect, but you would think Malaysia would have been smarter than just to kick Singapore out of their nation back in the day. Like, why would you kick them out? Obviously, that worked out a lot better for the...
I don't know the history of that. Why is that a thing?
Singaporeans than the Malaysians. They're not doing bad either, though. But anyways, the problem here for Haiti is I don't really see how they would become just magically this Singapore.
No, there's not the shipping lanes there.
In the middle of the Caribbean, there's no reason why traffic would flow off their coastline. In
fact, that's why the Panama Canal would be more of an important place to set up port than Haiti.
make Haiti, Singapore, like there would need to be some giant asteroid that landed in the Gulf of Mexico that just like completely wiped out the water from there, just there. Something like this would be forced to happen to give them the geography advantage. Gotta make sure we color that in. Yeah, there's nothing over here. Then maybe there would be enough traffic going in between Cuba and Haiti. You'd also probably have to buff out Brazil quite a bit to make sure. See, I don't know why they would do this. There's still all this space. What wouldn't send traffic to go just through Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic? Like there are routes around Singapore, but this is the most efficient way to go for these ships. And of course, there's other
way more efficient to go through than it would be if you wanted to do an alternate route, especially if you wanted to compare it to rerouting around Haiti to go by Puerto Rico.
Things that make Singapore very successful, very wealthy. On a quiet night in August 1958, the president of Haiti woke up from a dream, a vision of a world, a nightmare. Oh man, I'm really liking this story right here. The Western Hemisphere's Dubai. We need more optimistic maps like this.
Okay.
What if the kingdom of Italy? What the f is this?
What happened to Italy?
What did you do to Italy? This is supposed to be what if the kingdom of Italy survived till 2025? I don't know what the hell this little noodle.
Oh, at first I was like, is this like after the polar ice caps have melted and Italy is much more narrow?
Is though. Actually, I do. This is the Baja California Peninsula slapped in the middle of the Mediterranean. They kept the island of Sicily as well as Sardinia and Corsica. Also, the cities inside of the Baja Peninsula have been named to their, well, Italian names. Is this San Marino? Or where'd you... Oh, San Marino's right here. Northern Italy is going to remain the same as well as like this stuff up.
That's a city? Piss fart? Is that a real one? I've never heard of that. Wow.
Is going to remain the same as well as like this stuff off of Croatia. Funny enough, like the Italian peninsula though, I think the Baja Peninsula as well is pretty mountainous here. You can see as the mountains start off very high.
I've always wondered what goes on in the Baja Peninsula. I know there's some resort towns at the bottom, like on the south end, but like you never hear anything about the Baja. Is it just geographically sucky? Can't like grow like with the Italian peninsula. It's very fertile, so it's really good for like agriculture. So I'm guessing this probably is not.
The north and then stretch all the way down this landmass, which is actually weirdly very similar to the way Italy does it. They too have mountainous terrain that stretches from the north all the way into the south. I'm guessing that's what gave this person the inspiration to create this monstrosity. I'm still very disturbed though. Honestly, I have to think Italy in this universe would be a whole lot weaker. They just don't have as much land area. Not that land is everything. I mean, maybe they'd still be able to be very historically significant. They probably did like a lot of the things that they did historically. There's just so much less to work with, unless like maybe their what's it called? Their exclusive economic zone. Unless maybe that just has a ton more resources out there for them to mine and stuff. I mean, I don't know. It is making me hungry for a nice combination of Italian and Mexican food though. Something doesn't seem right here, but I can't put my finger on it. Piss fart. That is the name of a city on this map.
Okay. This was my question. I'm glad he brought it up. Somebody right. Of course it's Big Milk Man or Big Man Milk. A person like that would comment on the piss fart.
All right, they got me. That is not, in fact, a city. I actually, oh man, I just got trolled. I don't know.
It's two
There's been some crazy city names out there. Wait a minute.
The two A's makes it sound like Dutch, though. Piece for art.
See, I actually, oh man, I just got trolled. I don't know. There's been some crazy city names out there. Wait a minute. Who are you? I think that's the wrong peninsula. Italy, but I chopped its boot off and now it has a peg leg. Hey, that's the Mexico peninsula. Why do people keep saying this? This is the Italian peninsula located in Italy. Yes, how did I miss that? Talk about horrifying. What if it was the Chinese that actually formed the USSR, or the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics? So this is a communism that actually comes to power in China way earlier. We also have kind of the reverse.
Wait. 1911. So, okay, it starts after the fall of the Qing dynasty. They don't even have their republic era, and they just go right to unified communism. Okay.
This is a communism that actually comes to power in China way earlier. We also have kind of the reverse happening. Mao is now promoting Leon Trotsky to, well, take over Russia and spread.
That's the problem, though. It's like, doesn't it completely change this whole timeline? Because this is going to be happening earlier than with, like, the rise of power with like Trotsky and Lenin and stuff.
World Revolution. So remember, the USSR was a union of republics, essentially. I think people forget that fact. Just like the United States.
My whole thing, though, is Russia's the puppet. They're all little puppets, and the Russian part, Moscow is the puppeteer, right?
States, we are states that are united. This was a union of republics. Russia was here, yes, and they were the biggest, but people think the USSR and Russia are like synonymous. Not technically. You know, you had places like Belarus, Ukraine, all of Central Asia, the Caucasus Mountain region. All these regions had their own flags, their own, like, you know, the SSR, Belarus,
different ethnicities.
otherwise known as B.
I mean, it was an empire. Let's just be honest. It was a diversity of subject peoples. So, I mean, call it what you want, but it's an empire.
SSR, so yeah, they were flagged, which looks very similar to the one they have today. So I don't see why China couldn't technically do the same exact thing. I mean, we definitely have to do some crazy mental gymnastics to be able to get to something like this. But
by the way, in 1949, when the Chinese Civil War is over, this is what like the fear of the Western world was, that this was going to be created, a full just union with the Soviet Union and China. And if you know about the history, it's gonna start to break down a bit in the 50s. Soviet Union tried to, you know, they did give aid and stuff to China to do their thing, but Mao, he wants to do his own thing. Stalin's kind of his own thing. He's gonna die though, you know, eventually, but like they never become this
same exact thing. I mean, we definitely have to do some crazy mental gymnastics to be able to get to something like this, but I could see it, specifically with Southeast Asia, especially because a lot of these nations did end up becoming communist. Also, you have North Korea.
That's an interesting one to get it on there. Now, with Vietnam, so much of that was and their political movement into communism was in response to the French occupation and French colonialism that didn't end until 1940. The 1950s. But I guess they could go down that route. But Vietnam has always tried to stay broken off from China. But maybe in this scenario, I guess it could be different there.
Southeast Asia, especially because a lot of these nations did end up becoming communist. Also, you have North Korea right here, which is communist. You just got to kick out the South. And if the Chinese were the ones to spread to Siberia first before the
if this happened in 1911, that was before there was a South and North, but
Russians got here, then yeah, it makes sense. And then they're the ones that make it to Central Asia first too as well. I don't think this is like that insane. Now I want to see this world's version of the Warsaw Pact. Oh, what happened to India? Honestly, in this world, they might have like a Japanese communist puppet in their hands.
Well, the North and South India, quite divided that way.
They also might have Warsaw Pact members that are, I should probably rename it to not the Warsaw Pact. Yeah. It's more like the, well, maybe it is called the Tokyo Pact. Maybe Singapore's in there, Malaysia, Indonesia. This is just talking about the country, the USSR. Again,
by the way, this was the whole fear too, not just of the China-Russia unification, but of going into Southeast Asia. Domino theory, which kind of became the major foreign policy of the United States, was that, you know, China fell to communism, and that if Vietnam did, then that whole region of Southeast Asia would, then maybe it goes into India, maybe it goes down south, and you just get this giant alliance of communist nations. That's what the theory stated and what was supposed to justify the American involvement in the Vietnam War.
And it doesn't extend to the communist world of this universe. Population 1.7 billion. I wonder if there's still like a Sino-Soviet split. Active military 3.5 million. They've essentially just reformed a communist Mongolian empire. That's what I'm not just realizing.
Holy crap, you're right. They do. It's basically like Kublai Khan's empire here. Like pretty much this. At the height of the empire. They do. The Mongols get defeated in Thailand, and of course they failed twice to invade Japan. But like everything else, pretty legit. It's just communist Mongols.
They haven't stretched quite as far as like the actual Mongols, but they're getting there. The Soviet-led Hanoi Pact spreads its influence far across the world, from Africa to Latin America. In this world, the USSR does still exist as the world's largest economy and military power. However, tensions are rising in the world once again over the Kaliningrad question. The Republic of Russia, backed by the West, continues to be a thorn for the Russian People's Republic. Oh, basically, Kaliningrad is this world's new Taiwan. They say they're Russia, but they're not. They're not communist. Also, Matt, what's the relationship with Japan and the European part of Russia? Thanks. Relationship with Japan. Japan is occupied by the United States.
Japan, anti-communist. They were anti-communist. They'd have to be taken over.
Relations with European Russia. Russia's military weaker, perhaps, than our world. I feel like Russia and China would really not like each other in this universe. Yeah, this is just China going back to their old days of these massive dynasties. Got to make sure that Yellow River doesn't flood or change courses. Yeah, they probably wouldn't use...
Yuan dynasty, a.k.a. the Mongols.
Massive dynasties. Got to make sure that Yellow River doesn't flood or change courses. Yeah, they probably wouldn't use the word Soviet, but I get it. It's just for fun. This is what I was wondering. Interestingly, I think it would be more stable than the real USSR, except for the Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia part, which would be equivalent to the Baltics.
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. Would that end up being a problematic region there in Southeast Asia? Because historically, if you want to put the precedent there, yeah, China's always struggled to conquer and like unify down that far south. So that could be their Balkans. Well, maybe.
I'm trying to think to myself that same exact thing. Does this look like a more stable USSR? I mean, I think geographically speaking, they'd be sitting pretty comfortably. Remember, the USSR is always, and also Russia, is always very paranoid of this region. I mean, look at the countless times they've been invaded. It's just like huge, vast, flat land. It's very easy.
Well, let's just be honest. That's why there was a lot of collaborators with Nazi Germany there.
Step foot and just attack. That kind of plays into their paranoia, why they're so heavily into defense. I'm sure this Chinese USSR would be heavy into defense, but they probably wouldn't be as paranoid because there's so much more natural barriers. I mean, the freaking giant Himalayan mountains right here. Lots of things to think about.
What if
the United States, the freaking giant Himalayan mountains right here. Lots of things to think about.
What if China formed the USSR? Oh, same thing. Okay.
What if the United States had Canada's electoral system? I gotta admit, automatically just seeing more colors than just blue and red. I feel like we finally have like a big boy political system.
Some yellows,
I don't know what it is. I just see
and
two colors and I feel like they gotta dumb it down for us so much. Meanwhile, I see all these other countries with multi-party systems with all these colors on their election map. And it's like, oh yeah, that just looks a lot more serious. Like, I don't know. Is it just me? Yeah. It's interesting though, because I feel like multi-party systems like this, they do have obviously their pros, but they also have cons. There's pros and cons to both systems. But to be specific here, we're looking at the Canadian system. So we are looking still at a lot of blue and red. Remember though, in Canada, the red party are the Liberals.
Wait, hold on a sec. This is what would have happened. Now, the blue still is supposed to be like the more liberal side of things. I mean, American liberal, the blue and red, because that it looks reversed.
We are looking still at a lot of blue and red. Remember, though, in Canada, the red party are the Liberals with 217 seats, and the blue is actually conservative. So it's a little switch. Of course, not everyone uses the same color system. I think the UK also has their Liberal Party as the red. Actually, I think a lot of other countries use red as their Liberal Party. Bit more socialist vibes.
Maybe just coming from like some of these ideas of conservative and liberalism came out of revolutions like the French Revolution. And yeah, you might be a little bit more red for the liberal because they were the progressive people of the time.
I think a lot of people talk about that. Then there's also this Heritage Bloc, which is a light blue. They've got 24
Who are those guys?
seats,
What are
not
they?
100%,
What's
but
their
will
deal?
the Heritage Bloc be more willing to work with the Liberals or Conservatives? And finally, the Green Party, which is not a very powerful party in Canada. It's not generally a super powerful party in a lot of other political systems around the world, but it's really bad here. I will say this Green Party is even more powerful than our Green Party in the U.S. I mean, they don't even win a single place. They never win. They get like 1% of the vote. At least these people actually got a seat. They got a whole one seat. So in this universe, if we use the Canadian political system in the U.S., there wouldn't be a majority, but the...
Wait, and Michael Bloomberg was the head of the Liberal Party of the U.S. in this one? Okay.
Liberals would be very close. Oh, I forgot to mention the New Democratic Party. They've got 9 seats.
Wealthy Democrat from New York.
Well, I see one in New England. There's a pocket here in Detroit, a pocket here in Chicago. Hawaii and Alaska seem to really like that party. Again, my sentiments in the very beginning, even though a lot of this map is still just blue and red, there's different shades of blue and red, but there's also some orange, some green. Again, I just feel like a big boy. I can understand complicated information. Not all Americans are this. Oh, I need my blue and red and too many colors. It's too many colors. So this is actually the 2025 Canadian federal election map that other U.S. map that's kind of basing it off of. So that Heritage Bloc is basically supposed to represent the people in Quebec here, the French speakers. But as you can see, the
Quebecois. They just do their own party, huh?
seats still match. The Green Party with 1 seat, the New Democrats with 7. Well, they don't match, but they match proportionate to the situation that took place. Mark Carney, the new prime minister, he doesn't have a majority, but he's going to be set. Alberta voted entirely for the Conservative Party. I guess that's why there's so much news about how Alberta is going to now join the U.S. But
Well, if you did have this much diversity of allowing so many parties, your presidential candidate's going to get a lot less of the vote, both popular and electorally. It seems like you would have to reduce the amount of power the president has, especially because his party's not going to win by a majority.
Do like that the Green Party was out here in the West Coast in Victoria, just like it was in the U.S. map. Well, the Greens had 2 people running. Yeah, Mark Carney absolutely dominated. That was crazy. What a win. Why exactly is the Deep South voting for the Heritage Bloc? Are they meant to be more of a Deep South party for those who feel...
Oh, is it because like French, like Louisiana?
underrepresented, i.e. are they filling the role of, say, a populist candidate? Heritage Bloc is a parallel of Bloc, French word, a party whose goal is to have represent Quebec. I guess this is another way
that would just not exist if you were trying to do that with like the French Louisiana population. They've assimilated into general American South culture.
Break it down in terms of U.S. politicians, if you follow that sort of thing. I think a green candidate would be more likely in the Pacific Northwest or Hawaii. They made this block lame. Yeah, the color switch is definitely throwing a lot of people off.
What if America?
Big ol' thanks to my patrons over at Patreon.
All right, final thoughts. All right, those were some great alternate history, like what if kind of things that I had not thought about to the depth that this kind of made me think about. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about what would happen with, I guess, empires and religion if, Islam, let's say, never existed? And then, I mean, the whole Haiti thing, did you buy into that as a potential, Singapore light, I guess, of the West? I did bring in the idea of Haiti. What if Haiti had done things a little bit differently economically once they became independent? Like, for example, continue to invest and carry on their sugar production, what that could have done to them economically, especially compared to where they are now, which, again, is very difficult. But then we had the Soviet Union, basically not happening, I guess, for the fact that China would then go in, but like a unification of China into the Soviet Union and their states and some of those Southeast Asian states. Those are interesting. And then the final one with the political system of Canada and the US. What do you guys think about those? I think there's plenty to talk about and engage with. So we'll see you down in the comments. All right. See y'all next time.